Hey, what's up everybody, and welcome back to News Dose. So it's kind of hard to follow up yesterday's episode considering that Xbox Activision Blizzard Acquisition very well might possibly be the biggest gaming news in history, and it's probably going to be that way for the foreseeable future. I personally do not think that these major publisher acquisitions are suddenly going to be a common thing, so yeah, this was quite massive to say the least, but it is time to press on as we have more things to talk about today, including it doesn't necessarily look like Microsoft was the only possibility for an acquisition after all. They could have actually had competition after all, and the end result is much better than what you might expect, so we will go over that one today. Then also, a beloved game that Nintendo fans have been asking for years and years will finally be returning to Nintendo sometime here rather soon, so we're going to go over that one as well. In fact, let's go and get things started off today with some Nintendo news, as unfortunately, we do have a delay to talk about today. Yes, just 2 weeks before the cloud version of Dying Light 2 was supposed to release on the Nintendo Switch, which would have been February 4th, it has now been delayed to an undefined date. Currently, they are saying that they want to release this game within 6 months of its original release, but as it stands, it's just not the experience that they want you to have. Now, considering Dying Light 2 isn't going to be delayed on any other platform, this really probably comes more or less down to how it's running through the cloud on the Nintendo Switch. And if that is the situation and that it's just not running properly on the cloud and it's just an overall laggy experience, yeah, it's definitely for the best that they do delay this game and iron out those kinks. A lot of fans already kind of question cloud-based games as it stands, so the last thing that they need is to release a game on the cloud and then just be a terrible experience. That is not something that they want to see. That's not something the industry wants to see. So yeah, I think it's the best for them to just go ahead and delay this game and get it working the way it should be on the cloud. I am curious though, because we have been seeing several cloud-based games come over to the Switch. I mean, it is a nice workaround because some of these games are too demanding for the Switch, and now they can actually get these games running on a Switch through the cloud. But I am really curious to know how successful these games have been on the platform so far. I know cloud-based games to this point, I mean, there's still a lot of scrutiny when it comes to this type of stuff. So if you've bought a cloud-based game on the Nintendo Switch, let me know in the comments below and let me know how the game performed for you. Next up, let's talk about the Yakuza studio head Toshihiro Nagoshi. As many of you all probably know, I am a big fan of the Yakuza franchise, as I do personally believe that they are among the best story-driven experiences in the entire industry. But something about the Yakuza franchise is that they are currently changing right now. Most notably, the Yakuza studio head Toshihiro Nagoshi did leave Sega last year. This is something that we talked about before, and he simply said that he was going to be taking a different path. But there was some reports after that from Bloomberg that said that he was actually going to be working with NetEase on a new game, and well, it does seem like that might be the case after all. Video Game Chronicles has now recently spotted that a new trademark has been filed at the European Union Intellectual Property Office called Nagoshi Studio. They do also point out that they use the filing representative for previous NetEase trademarks. So yes, it is very much looking like he indeed is going to be working with NetEase on a new game after all, but it is very interesting to see that he's going to have his very own studio. That right there is very promising, and after he's been working on the Yakuza franchise for such a long time, it'll be really interesting to see what he does here next with NetEase. Hopefully they give him a good budget and everything, but considering they are going to be giving him his own studio, yeah, I think this one definitely sounds to be really exciting. As for the Yakuza franchise though, I don't think that anybody really has anything to worry about when it comes to Yakuza. That franchise seems to be going full force right now, and it seems to be in really good hands, so I do expect future installments for the Yakuza franchise to be just as good as what we've been seeing here with recent games. Moving on, let's go talk about that shocking Microsoft Activision Blizzard acquisition once again. We're just kind of dealing with the aftermath by this point, and I know there's a lot of speculation as to what's going to happen going forward, but something interesting about this acquisition is that it could have ended up being a lot different and something that I think would have really upset gamers as a whole. And what I mean by that is that apparently after Microsoft approached Activision about this acquisition, well, they weren't necessarily sold immediately and instead started to shop Activision to some other big corporations. And yeah, let's just go and check out exactly what was said. This was reported by Bloomberg, where they said, a person familiar with the discussions who was not authorized to speak publicly said Microsoft looked at Activision's situation, given all the negative attention and pressure on Kotick, and wondered if the beleaguered CEO would be willing to do a deal. Kotick initially didn't want to sell, according to another person familiar with the talks, and also put the word out to see if any other company would outbid Microsoft. But at that point, Kotick had little leverage with his board amid the ongoing public scrutiny at his company. They later on also state that yet even as Activision fought to salvage its reputation with players and investors, the stock dropped about 15% in the month after the Wall Street Journal article and weighed the potential takeover. Kotick and the board weren't sold on Microsoft as the acquirer, two people familiar with the matter said. Activision made calls to try to find other interested parties, said the people who asked not to be identified, talking about private conversations. Those included Facebook parent Meta Platforms Incorporated and at least one other big company. So there you have it. Facebook was actually approached about an acquisition for Activision Blizzard, and I feel like for most gamers, that would have been a terrible, terrible outcome. I don't think anybody wanted anything like that, and this is something that a lot of people were talking about yesterday. Obviously, Microsoft acquired this for an absurd amount of money at $68 billion. That is absolutely absurd, and something that has been pointed out is that there's not really another game company that can put up that type of money. But something that Phil Spencer said back in 2020 was that he doesn't necessarily look at Nintendo and Sony as their main competition going forward. He very much pointed at Google and Amazon as major threats to the game industry. So it was really interesting to see here that Facebook was actually approached about an Activision Blizzard acquisition. Thankfully, again, they rejected it because under Xbox, that has a lot of experience in gaming, and we know that they know what they're doing, so we're still going to get good games from this. They're going to release these games on Xbox Game Pass. They're going to be available on PC, through the cloud, and all that stuff. So Xbox is easily the better outcome than somebody like Facebook. Now, as for the other company approach, they don't exactly say here. My guess would probably be Google or Amazon. And again, I really would not like to see something like that either. So I'm actually really happy that Microsoft got this one. I imagine that the asking price was just too high for Google, Facebook, and Amazon, as again, Microsoft purchased this for $68 billion. So that is a high asking price, and it does look like it dissuaded some of these other companies from outbidding them, which is definitely good news, I think, for gamers. Now, one thing that I have seen over the last 24 hours is that a lot of people are asking for all these other big publishers to be acquired as well. They're kind of hoping Sony will jump in, or maybe Microsoft will acquire yet another big publisher, but I really don't think this is going to become a common thing. Really, this Activision acquisition was a little bit unique because even in this article, it says that Microsoft looked at Activision's situation, given all the negative attention and pressure on Kotick, and wondered if the beleaguered CEO would be willing to do a deal. So because of all of those scandals and lawsuits, I feel like Activision Blizzard was a little bit more willing to sell because of that. As for all these other publishers, there's two things happening here. One, they're going to be incredibly expensive. Yes, you do have Jeff Keighley over on Twitter posting the different market caps for all of these different publishers, and some of them look to be affordable, but something that you need to understand is that these companies are not going to sell at the market cap. The asking price is going to be much, much higher, especially when you start to consider different gaming IP. So these companies are going to be incredibly expensive, but the other thing is, are these companies willing to sell? Activision was willing to sell because of the situation that they found themselves in. But as for these other companies, they're not dealing with that. I mean, maybe outside of Ubisoft, but not to the same degree as Activision. So no, I don't think that these publisher acquisitions are suddenly going to become a common thing. Let's go and talk about Nintendo, though, as one of the most beloved Nintendo 64 games has officially gotten a release date for Switch Online Plus expansion pack. And while I do know that the price of that service is a little bit more on the pricey side, and it has been controversial, well, Banjo-Kazooie will now be releasing on Switch Online Plus expansion pack January 20th. Yes, it will be available tomorrow, and truthfully, this is one of my all-time favorite games. I absolutely adore the Banjo-Kazooie IP, and I know much of the game community feels the exact same way, as we very much saw when Banjo-Kazooie was revealed for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. The fans went absolutely crazy over that reveal, so it is just so cool to see Banjo-Kazooie come back to a Nintendo platform in the year of 2022. I mean, the original Banjo-Kazooie released way back in 1998 for the Nintendo 64, so after all these years, it's finally coming back over to Nintendo thanks to Xbox allowing this to happen. This just continues to show Xbox and Nintendo has a very good relationship. This has been evident for quite a while now with games like Ori and the Will of the Wisp releasing over on Nintendo as well, but something that I have found to be interesting about this relationship is that it doesn't seem to be completely one-sided, as it is starting to sound like that GoldenEye remaster might actually be heading over to Xbox sometime here soon. I do wonder if that was a deal made between Xbox and Nintendo here, like you can have Banjo if we can have GoldenEye, and maybe we could get that game here sometime here soon as well. We did talk about that leak earlier in the month. But yes, if you haven't played Banjo-Kazooie up to this point, and if you have Switch Plus Online Expansion Pack, I do highly recommend trying this game out. I personally think that Banjo-Kazooie 1 and 2 for that matter, I think both of these games aged incredibly well, and they still sit among some of the better 3D platformers all these years later. Again, you will be able to play this game on your Nintendo Switch starting tomorrow on January 20th. Now, one last thing that we're going to talk about just real quick, and the reason I want to talk about this today is just to kind of as a warning, more or less, but unfortunately, a big Nintendo Switch game did leak, and that would be Pokemon Legends Arceus. It does seem like a few early copies has made their way out to the wild, and this seems to be a common thing with some of the bigger Nintendo releases as of recent, but if you're worried about spoilers or anything for that game, I would recommend not going into any kind of Pokemon Legends Arceus topics in the coming weeks. There's already several pictures making their way online right now, including some of the new Pokemon in this game, so if you want those to be a surprise, I would recommend steering clear of those topics. Now, if you are interested in seeing some of those new Pokemon, you can absolutely find them out on the internet. I won't be showing them on my channel, but if that is something that you want to do, you can absolutely do that as well. Let's go and take a look at the poll of the day, though, and this really is going to be a big talking point for the next year until that acquisition for Activision Blizzard is completed. But I wanted to ask you all, do you think Call of Duty will end up being exclusive to Xbox with the Activision Blizzard acquisition? And as you can see here, most of you all do believe that will be the case, with 59% of you saying yes, while 36% of you said no. But really, what I think you can take away from here is that there's a lot of opinions about what's going to happen with Call of Duty. A large portion of the community does believe it will not be exclusive, while another large part of the community believes it will be exclusive. When you start to think about it, this is pretty much the Bethesda acquisition all over again, because the exact same conversations was happening back then. And that's kind of where I want to go with this, because initially when this first happened yesterday, when I first heard Microsoft was acquiring Activision Blizzard, my initial thought was maybe they'll just kind of treat Call of Duty as a Minecraft situation. It is a massive franchise, but then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that there actually is a very good chance that this might end up being exclusive. Now, I know the first thing that everybody's going to kind of throw out there, and that's what Phil Spencer stated yesterday, where he said, "I'll just say to players out there who are playing Activision Blizzard games on Sony's platform, it's not our intent to pull communities away from that platform, and we remained committed to that." The thing about this statement, though, is that it's actually very similar to what they said when acquiring Bethesda. And what that ended up meaning was that games that already exist on current platforms will continue to be supported. Something like The Elder Scrolls Online will still be supported on PlayStation. But new games such as Starfield and The Elder Scrolls 6, those will be exclusive to Xbox. And if they once again apply the same strategy, well, that would mean games like Warzone that are currently available on PlayStation will continue to be supported on PlayStation, but there is a possibility that completely new Call of Duty games will be exclusive to Xbox. So yes, I do think that there's a very, very real chance that these games end up being exclusive, and that's something that fans might want to prepare for. I understand that this is a big franchise, and that by removing PlayStation, that would be a big community, but at the same time, Xbox has Xbox consoles, they have PC, they have cloud gaming, and most importantly, they have Xbox Game Pass. And to them, the most important thing is to grow Xbox Game Pass. And how do you grow Xbox Game Pass? By making exclusive content that releases into the service day one. And a game like Call of Duty would accelerate that growth dramatically. So if you look at it from that perspective, again, exclusive games such as Call of Duty would actually majorly help their end goal. That is, after all, the reason that they acquired Activision Blizzard in the first place. I think for the time being, just based off of history so far, we just need to kind of follow what happened with Bethesda and what to expect in this situation. Unless a game already has contractual obligations, or if a game already exists on current platforms, then at this point in time, I would expect completely new games, including Call of Duty, to be exclusive to Xbox going forward. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode, but if you liked the video, don't forget to bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.